we started about 3.5 years ago. Shawn Lamberth and I were making a film about a record producer called Youth, and we'd interviewed Paul McCartney, and we needed somebody to pretend to be Paul McCartney in the studio. So my first choice was Shawn Lee. So we, so we went to Shawn's studio, and we were filming Shawn playing drums and guitar, and in one of the breaks he said, "I've got a great idea for a film. Somebody should make a film about library music." So I said, "Okay, yeah, great." Carried on, and then about a week later, I was working on my own somewhere up north, and it was really bleak, and it was raining, and I was on my own, and I was thinking about this idea for a film about library music, and I thought, you know what, let's do it. It's got to be better than this. So I phoned Shawn and said, "Yeah, let's go for it." And the following week, we'd booked in 2 interviews, and we were off. We were on our way. So 3.5 years later, we're here.
I mean, I'm working in this business for quite a while now, and I learned a lot. Of course, in the film you always have to concentrate on certain aspects, like this hunters and collectors scene and the musicians. But what you haven't mentioned, or not so deeply, as far as I understood, I mean, I obviously have only understood maybe 80% of what was talked has been in the film there. But what about the publishing and the record companies there? What role do they play? You want to say something to that? I mean, you're close to that.
Well, good evening.
Yeah.
Well, the publishers, we had, obviously it was KPM and the guy from Bosworth and Warren DeWolf, and some of the...
EMI also?
Yes, EMI, yeah, and
we also visited Warner Chapel in some of the
yeah. Bjorn Varga! There he is. Thank you so much.
Yeah, but the role of these companies.
Well, I mean, the role is to exploit the material that the composers do. I mean, Robin Phillips, who ran KPM in the 70s and Bruton in the early 80s, he really revolutionized the library world, and he had the ideas to encourage the musicians to have a really free rein to do expressive music. And then they got this music to the editors, to the TV companies, and exploited it. So they had this music, and it was just, a barrage of stuff. I mean, they're basically, the deal is 50-50, the publishing, for 50 for the library, 50 for the composers, and it's in perpetuity, is it not? And it is, and that's how it works. And basically, the labels are publishers. So EMI, the KPM, they are publishers essentially, rather than a record label, because the records were not sold commercially.
Yeah.
So that's how it works, basically.
I think what you're getting at is without the publishers, this music wouldn't exist, because the composers are coming up with this stuff, but without that output and without being able to get the stuff onto TV or into films, there would be no library music.
That's what I wanted to hear. Yeah. So to the footage, the pictures, the found footage, or where have you got? I think you were the one who wasn't. Is that right? Is that right that you were? Yeah. Maybe you can tell the audience something about how you found your material, the old, especially the old films and stills and things like that.
Because the music was never commercially released, they didn't actually have to do any promotional film, so it was really hard to try and find any film footage and even any pictures. So there was very few actual recorded sessions on video. Well, it wouldn't be video, it wouldn't be film or even photographs. So we were very lucky to have good access to a lot of the composers. First of all, the record labels had some pictures of sessions that they might have done in like Germany or Belgium or like that. So in Brussels, yeah. So they would have had they would have had pictures of the orchestras and stuff like that. But a lot of the composers themselves, because it was a bit of a drinking thing, they were like a bit like gangs, weren't they? So they would all disappear off to wherever, like say they'd go to Germany and they'd think, oh great, we've got 3 days in Germany, so what we're going to do is, the first day we're going to do all the recording, and then that night we're going to get smashed, like really drunk, and then wake up, do a bit more recording, get more drunk. But what they would do, they would all have Super 8 cameras, so they would record themselves getting drunk. You know, like, and that's, you saw some of that footage in there. There was there was some footage of Dave Richmond, who's one of the bass players, with the big sort of hair goes around his face, and like he's walking around drunk. And that was actually, I can't remember who shot that. Who shot that? Some very famous composer also shot that, and it was his son who found that footage and gave it to us and let us use it in the film. So sourcing that sort of material was valuable, really. You know, we couldn't have done it without that, because it would have been very stiff otherwise. Yeah.
Yeah. Talking about fathers and sons. You mentioned it a little bit in the end of the film, but is there a new generation of film composers? We always saw a lot of heroes like white old man, not one woman. One black man, one black DJ, but what about the new? I mean, the influences became clear, and that was really widening the horizons, as I said. But what about the scene today? Maybe you can.
I think, obviously library music is bigger now than it ever has been. There's more libraries. People like EMI and BMG, these big companies, they have basically bought a lot of libraries. I mean, EMI library they have a few German libraries. They have Selected Sound, Sonoton, Color Sounds. There's they own Themes, they own Peer. It's crazy. KPM, of course, Brawl, and the list goes on. So there is a lot of that old music which is now like under big umbrellas, but there's loads of people making library music now. It's quite big business. I hosted the Library Music Awards, if you can believe they have that, last year. Welcome to the 21st anniversary of the Library Music Awards. And
where was it?
It was in London, and there were a lot of young composers there making library music. And library music always reflects the music of the time, and so you get these sort of alternative versions of popular music. And now what library music really is it sounds like pop music. So very electronic pop music, very different from the library music which we have in the film, but it's big business. And I think the difference between commercial music and library music is less now. I think you get people that they make a commercial track and then they make a library track for the label, and so everybody's sort of in on it. And it's like it's more ways to get your music used and to earn money off of it. And I think there's a lot of people like myself and Adrian Young, who's in the film, who are very influenced by this older library music, and it's been inspirational, and it affects the way that we think about music, the music we listen to, and how we write and record music. And I think Adrian's a good example of that. He did Luke Cage. He's a composer for that, and he's doing a new show for Netflix now. And he's very much into old library music, and I think that's really informed where his musical head is. But library music, I think now people know more about it now than they ever have. I think we're seeing this movement of lots of things coming around this film. There's numerous books being out, and lots of reissues, and there's more interest in it now. And I hope that continues to be so. I feel like this film is an important document of this music, and it deserved to exist. And even before this film was made, it was a dream of mine to see a film about library music. And eventually I realized that nobody else was ever going to make a film about library music, and if I wanted to see one, then somehow I would have to find a way to make a film. And so it was very fortuitous that we talked about that film that one time. And here we are now, and it feels really amazing to watch a film and to have people see it. And I hope people learn a lot and they enjoyed it, and we had a great time making it. And we laughed a lot.
Yeah, I mean, you certainly did polish the image of this kind of this music, which is supposed to be like secondary music, functional music, porn music, whatever, all these vocabularies. And also, Helmut is here, the label that yeah, brings out the record. That's what I want to mention and stress again. You can buy the record and the DVD also, right?
Take it out, Helmut.
And if you have questions to the guys, I think it's pretty late now. We can go outside and talk with them there, and then I would say thanks a lot. Yes. Now, except someone has an urgent question to the audience, to everybody here. There's an urgent. There's one. Okay.
I just have one question. Some time ago I read an article in a newspaper saying that many very famous pop music, like Bee Gees and Beach Boys, was not produced by the people themselves, but they were replaced for recording by studio musicians. And do these studio musicians also are part of what you call library music, or are they a different world that is separated from what you call library?
Very good question.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think if you look at particularly the French musicians that were in this film and the British musicians, these guys not only did a lot of library music, but they played on all the pop sessions in their countries. And people like Alan Hawkshaw and Alan Parker, you know, and Dave Richmond, who were all in the film. Herbie Flowers, I mean, they played with David Bowie. And Walk on the Wild Side, the bass player is Herbie Flowers, who's in the film. And Serge Gainsbourg, Melody Nelson, like most of the musicians that were on that record are in this film. Alan Hawkshaw plays the organ on Je T'aime. I mean, these guys they were the best musicians in the studio at the time. And so they were doing pop sessions during the day, and then they might do a library session straight after. So they were, that's why the music is so good, because these guys were great players, and they were great writers, and they lived in the studio.
Okay.
Thanks.